Okay, hello. Hello, everyone. Okay, let's start. I'm glad to see all of you. My name is Anastasia, and today I'm going to be hello. And today, I'm going to be your host of today's webinar. So if you can hear me well, could you please write plus in chat so I could understand that our connection is good and you can hear me well. Great, I see. Okay, great. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. Unfortunately, I cannot see you nor hear you, but I can get responses from you in chat. That's why I will ask you to write something about yourself, where you're from and how you are today, just to know you better. And while you're writing this information, I will introduce myself. So, my name is Anastasia. As I have already told you, I am a senior teacher and a methodologist in the Green Country ESL School Network. I am also an editor for the learning materials for the TalkEn.Cloud and Green Country School. And of course, I'm a trainer. I have been teaching in Green Country for almost 4 years. And I have got a lot of experience, and today I am glad to share this experience with you. Okay, let's see. So I can see there are people from Rivne, Vinnytsia, Myrgorod, Kyiv. Okay, Toretsk, Cherkasy, Odessa, Kharkiv. I'm also from Kharkiv. Okay, Chernihiv. Great, Lutsk. Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar. And I think that we can start with you. So, and we will start with a short lead-in. Look please at this picture. And think how you can describe this girl with one word and write this word to me in chat. Let's see how you can describe this girl. Yes. Bored. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She is bored. Yeah. Well, I thought that she could be inattentive, but I like your option better. Yeah. So throughout the years that I have been teaching, I have faced many problems with my students, and lack of students' attention, and the fact that they sometimes can be bored during the lessons has been one of the most frequent problems that I had to face. And that is something that we're going to discuss with you today. We will talk about tips and tricks how to hold and grab our students' attention. But first of all, let's discuss what is attention and why does it matter so much. So, attention is the act of directing one's mind to notice something, to see, or to listen. And if we talk about the learning process, it plays an important role as it significantly influences the learning outcome, and it allows our students to filter some unnecessary information, background noise, and visual distractions. And when our students learn how to do that, they are able to concentrate and focus on the material being taught or the message being delivered by the teacher. Okay, and this student's ability to focus on something for some period of time brings out the term attention span. And let's talk about attention span in details. What it is? Okay, attention span is defined as the length of time our students, or just people in general, can keep their thoughts and interest fixed on something. In terms of teaching, that's the period of time our students can be focused on a certain task or on something that we want to teach them. And of course, attention span can be different depending on different age groups. And there is something that we are going to find out with you now. Before I tell you the results and show you the chart with attention span of different age groups, I would ask you to scan this QR code and answer just one simple question. So I'll give you 1 minute to scan this QR code. Okay, and let's see. Few more seconds. Okay, so answer the question. What is the attention span of a 10-year-old student? Keep answering, please. I'm waiting. Okay. So, all right. One more minute, and then we will check the results. Yeah, by the way, if you cannot scan the QR code, you can write the answer in chat. Yeah, so the majority of people thinks that the attention span of a 10-year-old student is from 8 to 12 minutes. Interesting. Okay, let's find out the results. So I'm going to close this poll for now, and let's see if you're right or no. So according to the scientists and according to the experts, the attention span of different age groups is considered to be from 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. So That means that the attention span of a 10-year-old student is from 20 to 30 minutes. Can you believe it? Okay. And based on your teaching experience, do you agree or disagree with the chart presented on this slide? Do you think that your students, for example, if we take 10-year-old students, can keep their attention for 20 minutes? Write in chat, please, if you agree or disagree. Mhm. Okay, yes, I see people disagree. Okay, yeah. Yeah, somebody is saying it depends on the theme. Agreed. Mhm. Yeah. So in fact, there are plenty of reasons and factors that affect our students' ability to focus on a certain task. And let's look at the range of these factors. The first fact that can influence our students' ability to be focused is the lack of practice and understanding the material. That means if the topic you're about to explain is too difficult for students, or the instructions given by the teacher are not clear, and students don't get enough practice, all of these eventually might lead to them losing their interest and to them not paying attention. That is why, if you want your students to be concentrated, prepare the instructions. Think how you can tell your students what they need to do, work on the topic, consider their interests, and then I think it will improve the situation. Okay, let's move on. The next problem is that your students might not be challenged enough. If the material is too easy for them or is not interesting, your students don't have enough motivation, they don't feel engaged and interested in the lesson. That is why, again, while planning a lesson or while creating a task, take into consideration your students' English level, their interests, what would be interesting for them, and then create the tasks according to these factors. The next thing is that your students might get distracted by some things in the classroom, such as chatty classmates, messy whiteboard, or cluttered desks. All of these can significantly influence your students' ability to focus. That is why it is teachers' responsibility to control the noise level in the classroom and to keep the whiteboard clean and teach your students how to keep their desks clean. They have to put everything that they don't need into their bags and keep their desks clean. The next factor is lack of motivation. Students who don't know why they are learning English, or students who are poorly motivated, are more likely to lose attention in the classroom and eventually fall behind. That is why you might try to encourage your students from time to time, praise them, make them understand that they matter, that everything they say is important, and of course, teach them that it is okay to make mistakes, that they won't be punished for this. The next factor is the wrong learning style. We all understand that all students are different, and some students learn by, okay, let me make it closer. Yeah, some students learn by seeing, using some charts, pictures, PowerPoint presentations. Others learn better by listening to you, by hearing, by watching some videos. Others prefer reading and writing, and some other students prefer doing something with their hands, like creating some projects or touching something. That is why it is necessary to use different learning styles during your lesson and keep balance them. In such way, you will make your lessons more interactive, and you will allow all students of different learning styles to be engaged into the lesson, and you will give them more opportunities to participate if you incorporate different learning styles into your learning and teaching process. Sorry. Okay, let's move on. The next problem is physical reasons. We have the factors that we have discussed above are connected to the emotional and mental sphere, but we all understand that sometimes our students might feel tired, hungry, or sleepy, and that is something that we unfortunately cannot anticipate, because we may never know if our students are tired, if they come to the lesson in a good mood or in a bad mood, but it is something that we can influence and try to change somehow. For example, play some cheerful music, or again, encourage and praise your students. As for them being hungry, well, I wouldn't recommend giving some food, but you can just encourage your students. And our students' ability to keep attention depends not only on our students, but also on the teacher's ability to present the material and on our teaching skills. So that means that a well-prepared teacher who knows the topic, who knows the material, has better chances to keep students focused and concentrated on the topic. That is why when you come to the lesson, prepare beforehand, be in a good mood, and don't let any negative moments ruin your lesson, and I'm sure that everything will be okay. So far we have discussed the factors that can influence, but what about some tips which we can use to avoid these negative situations and to keep our students' attention throughout the whole lesson? So let's look at these tips. One of the things that you can do is that you can try to make your classes balanced by using different sapling and storing activities. We're going to discuss all of these tips in details a little bit later. Now I'm just naming all of them, and then we will go in details. I will show you some examples, and if you know some examples, you will also share them with me. So using sapling and storing activities is one of the tips that can help you keep your classes balanced and hold your students' attention. Another advice is to plan interaction patterns. And by that, I mean that you should give your students more opportunities to communicate with everyone, not only with you as a teacher, but with other students, and let them share their ideas with each other. The next tip is incorporate active learning, meaning that you can try and engage your students actively in the learning process. And if your students keep losing their attention, you can use some attention grabbers, which are meant to be some funny phrases, which you can ask your students to continue. So let's look at these tips in details. So I think that you all know that learning English, and not only English, any other foreign language can be boring and sometimes monotonous. That is why it is important for teachers to brainstorm some tips how to make these lessons more interactive and interesting. And one of the things that you can do is you can use some stories and settlers. So let's see what these terms mean. Stories or storing activities are the tasks that stimulate or energize our students, while settlers are the activities that motivate and calm our students. Stories help our students to activate their knowledge and to revise some materials, while settlers help us to set up the scene for a lesson and build routines. And I wonder if you know any examples of storing activities. Could you write them in chat, please? And after that, we will go to the next topic and we will look at these results. Write the examples of storing activities, please. Hot potato, yes. Any other examples? Okay, I see. Interactive dialogues, Kahoot, Quizlet, quizzes, yes. I agree. Find someone who riddles, games. Great. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. And I'm sorry, guys, we're having some technical problems. Can you hear me well? Can you see my presentation? I'm just checking if I can continue or not. Yes, okay, great, wonderful. Yeah, okay, then let's continue. Don't worry, if I disappear, stay here You can't see me. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're having some technical problems. I'm trying to fix it. Okay. If you can't see me, try at least to listen to me. Yes. And let's return to the examples of storing activities. I have seen that you have mentioned plenty of the examples, and you are right. So some of the typical storing activities are songs with movements, action games, surveys, miming, such as, for example, a game, Who Am I? Yeah, where students have to show something and others have to guess what animal they are or the job that they want to describe. Other examples are mingling activities, and one of my favorites is Find Someone Who, and you have already mentioned it. Excellent. Yeah. I like this activity because all of the students are engaged and in fact they're eager to find someone who matches the criteria in the worksheet. So every time I conduct this activity with my student, I can see that they're super excited to ask others and find out something about their partners. Okay, so let's continue. We can also conduct such activities as role plays, that you can ask them to role play a dialogue or create a dialogue and something like this, running dictations. I hope that you know what a running dictation is. If you don't, I will tell you now. So that's kind of activity when a teacher sticks a note with something on the board or in the hall or just on the wall, a note with words or sentences on it. And then you put students in pairs and you ask one student to come to this note. You give 1 minute to look at the note and remember all the words or sentences. Then the student needs to come back and dictate these words to their partners. And after some period of time, you can ask students to change their roles. As for the next activity, moving lines, it can be used both with young learners and with teenagers. Students are standing in two lines and a teacher gives it a topic to students and sets a time, for example, 1 minute, and students need to discuss this topic within 1 minute. And when the time runs out, one line remains still and the other one has to move. Thus, students get new partners and new topic, and they continue discussing a new topic with new partners. Apart from the games and activities that I have already mentioned, you can also ask them to act out, and you can also play such games as Kahoot, Bamboozle, quizzes. In fact, I think that these games are loved by all the students, and whenever I give my students a choice to choose between, for example, playing Kahoot and making a dialogue, or I don't know, singing a song, they always choose Kahoot. I don't know what is so special about these games, but they adore them. And I have prepared some other examples. Let's take a look at them. So one of the activities that we frequently used in Green Country is called half crossword. That is the activity when students get halves of the crossword and they need to find out the words by asking the questions to their partners and by explaining the words to their partners. This activity allows students to work together to develop their collaborative skills, and it teaches them how to listen to each other and pay attention to details. Okay, so let's move on. The next game which I think that you all know because we all used to play it in the childhood. It's called Chinese whispers or broken telephone. It can be used in the classroom as well. So the rules are simple. Students pass the words or phrases down a line, and they need to pass these words to the person in front of the line. And if the word is correct, there is no loser. Okay, let's continue. The next game is called Blind Painter, and let's take a look at it. So students need to work in pairs again. You give them 2 different pictures, and students need to describe these pictures to each other and draw each other's pictures. But the tricky moment is that students aren't allowed to show how to draw the pictures or where to draw the details, so they can only speak, they can only explain, they cannot use their fingers or anything else to demonstrate the details in the picture. And to make it more challenging, you can set a timer. For example, you can give your students 5 minutes to describe and draw each other's pictures, and after that you can ask them to compare who's a better painter. Okay, let's continue. And the next game, which can be used both for online and offline courses, is called Scavenger Hunt. And I wonder if you know what this game is about. If you know, write in chat a short description of this game. What are the rules? What are students supposed to do in this game? So, guys, what are the rules of an activity called Scavenger Hunt? What are the students supposed to do in this game? Okay, I can't see any responses. So I suppose that maybe you have never played this game and you don't know. It's okay. I will explain. So the rules of this game are pretty simple. Students get different tasks and they have to complete these tasks, and for example, within some time limits. For example, you can ask your students to find something blue in their house, and you can give them only 30 seconds to find this object. And I can tell you that my students adore this. I played this game plenty of times with young learners. I have conducted these activities online, and they were running like crazy around the house trying to find these things. I'm not sure that their parents were happy, but the students were. They were trying to compete with each other and find things as fast as possible. And you can conduct this activity offline as well, but pay attention that this activity involves a lot of noise. That is why before asking your students to find something, instruct them that they shouldn't run, they shouldn't push each other, and they shouldn't shout. Of course, they will be excited to do it as fast as possible, but just tell them some rules, some safety rules. Okay, and let's move on. Okay. And now let's talk about some examples of Sapling activities. As we have mentioned, we use these activities to calm our students and to build their routines. And let's look at the examples. Some of the examples can be categorizing activities when you give a set of words to your students and you ask them to put the words into different columns, for example, vegetables, fruits, drinks, and so on. The next activities are connected to organizing the words, filling in the gaps. You can ask your students to match the words with the pictures, to find the words in the word searches, and to complete the crossword. But in this case, students are working individually. They do not interact with their partners. They simply read the definition and do the crossword. And let's take a look at one of the tasks in our books, in Green Country books. So this activity is for A2 level, and students need to complete the mind map with different words. They need to fill in the gaps and then match the words with the pictures. It's quite interesting. And let's continue. Apart from asking your students to find the words and match them with the pictures, you can ask your students to tell the stories and put the pictures in the correct order. Or you can yourself tell the story, ask your students to listen, and simply put the pictures in the correct order. It works well with students of lower levels because they don't have enough skills to make up their own stories, but they're quite able to listen to you and order the pictures. Another activity that can be used as a sapling task is spot the difference. You give your students two pictures which seem to be similar, but in fact they are different, and you ask them to find 5 differences, for example, or something like this. Another task that can be used is a 60-second challenge, and you can use this task as a revision before the test, for example, or at the beginning of a new topic to revise the words from the previous topics. In this task, you simply ask your students to write all the words that they have learned throughout the course or in the previous unit within 60 seconds. And after that, you put them in pairs and you ask them to compare who's got more words. And as a feedback, you can conduct a competition. For example, on the board, you can write the names of all the students and ask them to tell you the total number of the words that they have written. And after you write the number of the words, you will find the winner, a student who's got more words. You can praise this winner and encourage others to work harder. And the last, but not the least, of course, activity that I have prepared for you is creative assignments or crafts. I'm sure that all of the students adore creating something, whether it is a project or a picture to draw. And let's take a look. This is one of the crafts for young learners. And students have to cut out the pictures, color the pictures, and then they have to tell about their city, their country, and about themselves. And while your students are conducting this activity, you may turn on some relaxing background music and let them focus on the task. And now, could you please write any other examples of sapling activities? I'm sure that you know some of them, the ones that I haven't mentioned. Read and write, great. Find someone who is an example of a storying activity. Puzzles, yeah, great. Secret word, wonderful. To make a story using colors. That's a nice idea. Okay, yes. Okay, a few more ideas and we will continue. Dictionary game, yeah, wonderful. Great. So you know plenty of examples. Great. Let's continue that. So we have discussed some examples. We have discussed the meaning of storing and settling activities, but we haven't talked about when and how exactly we can implement them into our lesson. So let's take a look. We usually use settling and storing activities at the start or at the end of the lesson, but it doesn't mean that you cannot use them in the middle of the lesson. You can also use them as bridges between activities or lead-ins before the beginning of a new topic or a task. For example, if you're about to begin a topic about traveling, you can ask your students to create a mind map with all the things that they need to take with themselves if they want to go on a trip. And it will be an example of a settling activities because they have to draw something, they have to think about it. An example of a storing activity will be a task where students need to mingle and ask each other which countries they have been to. And after that, the students have to report this information to the teacher. That's it. If you want to use storing and settling activities, you need to take in account that they shouldn't be difficult in terms of instructions and in terms of understanding the task itself, and they shouldn't be too long, no more than 5-7 minutes. Of course, if you decide to create a craft, you need to give your students more time for this activity, but we usually conduct these types of activities like creative assignments or crafts at the end of the lesson, and we usually give them more time. But in general, if it's at the beginning of the lesson or in the middle of the lesson, in a way of a bridge or lead-in, it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. Okay, great. And while we were talking about different activities, I have mentioned several times that students need to work in pairs or individually while conducting different activities or completing different tasks. And that is why we're going to talk about interaction patterns with you now, which are defined as the different possibilities in which our students can interact with each other and with the teacher in the classroom. These interaction patterns help our students, help teachers set an appropriate pace. They make our lessons more dynamic because when students work not only on their own and interact not only with the teacher, they get more information, they learn something new, and they do not become so bored. And of course, interaction patterns help us to change the language learning atmosphere and achieve learning aims more effectively. Meaning that, for example, if the learning aim of a lesson is to improve students' speaking skills, of course, it is important for students to work in pairs or in groups or to speak more. That is why you need to pair them up as much as possible during the lesson. And now, let's take a look at some interaction patterns. So, in the first pattern, the teacher interacts with the whole class, and it is used to collect the feedback, elicit information from the students, usually before the presentation of a new topic, to give instructions and, of course, to explain some topics or clarify some lexical units. The next interaction pattern involves teacher working only with one student, and it is usually used for getting feedback, personal feedback, when you ask some personalized question, or when you provide a demonstration of a task, or when you check students' comprehension, especially before asking your students to complete the tasks or work on something individually. It is essential to check whether your students have understood what they are supposed to do. That's why we use this pattern. The next pattern means that students need to work in groups in order to practice some conversations or to create projects and conduct surveys. In the next pattern, students work in pairs and complete different types of activities, like discussing something, explaining the words as in the crossword, or role-playing something, or again, you can even ask your students to work together and fill in the gaps or read a text in pairs in order to check their reading skills. The next pattern means that students are working individually, and they usually complete such tasks as reading and writing activities or some comprehension exercises. As for the last pattern, it is pretty similar to the second one, but in this pattern, it is student who initiates the conversation in order to ask some questions about a rule or an assignment, or in order to clarify some words which they don't know, or ask teacher to translate some lexical units. And now, darlings, could you please write which interaction patterns do you use at your lessons? Oh, all of them? Wonderful. Yeah, I can see that you use all of the interaction patterns. That's a good thing because combination of different interaction patterns makes our lessons more interactive, interesting, and less boring for students. But of course, in order to use these interaction patterns effectively, don't forget to give clear instructions and tell the students about the roles that they have to fulfill while working in pairs or in groups, for example, what your students are responsible for. Okay. And now let's move on, and we're going to talk about active learning. And in order to understand this concept better, I suggest that we analyze it in comparison with passive learning. And let's take a look. Active learning is considered to be learner-centered, while passive learning is teacher-centered. Active learning requires our students to use higher order thinking skills and to analyze and discuss some information, while passive learning requires our learners simply to absorb, assimilate, consider, and sometimes even translate the information. While if we prioritize active learning, you might notice some tasks as conversation and debate, while passive learning encourages such activities as listening tasks and activities which involve students paying attention to details. And of course, in order to implement active learning, it is necessary to learn the teacher's role in both of these types of learning. So let's look at the roles of the teachers. Okay, if we talk about active learning, here a teacher is a facilitator, while in a passive learning, a teacher is a presenter of information. In active learning, teacher provides students with more freedom and more opportunities to talk, discuss, ask questions, and sometimes even give feedback to each other. Meanwhile, in passive learning, students just listen to the teacher and do not talk at all, or just maybe a little bit during the lesson. In terms of explaining the material, it is the teacher's responsibility to explain and present the material in the passive style of learning, while in the active learning style, students explore the content themselves and then they build their knowledge based on the information that they will get from this content, and we call this approach as guided discovery, and it can be used before the presentation of a grammar topic, for example. And active learning is considered to be more efficient as it provides opportunities for all the types of learners, visual learners, auditory learners, and other types of learners. As we always change the activities, we combine different activities, we provide more freedom for students. Meanwhile, in passive learning style, students just listen. So this type of learning is better for those learners who prefer listening to teachers. And let's look at the steps on how we can implement this type of learning. The first thing that is important to do is to set clear learning aims and plan a lesson accordingly, as it will help you to find the necessary activities and choose between active or learning style. The next thing, it is important to use different interaction patterns. As we have already discussed, you will only benefit from this, and it will make your lessons more interesting and more interactive. The next tip is to give short and clear instructions, and instead of simply explaining and stating what your students are supposed to do in a certain task, try to demonstrate the task on the screen or on the board and try to elicit the information from the students. And you can also ask your students to demonstrate an example of a dialogue or an example of the question if your students have to make some questions and then ask these questions to each other. So try to use demonstration rather than explanation. The next thing, if you want to give clear instructions, it's important to check your students' understanding after you give the instructions. And that is why my recommendation is to avoid asking such questions as, do you understand? Is it clear? Or has everyone got it? Because I'm sure that your students will automatically say, yes, everything is clear, teacher. But in fact, when it comes to practice, you will find out that your students don't understand what they are supposed to do. That's why it's better to use ICQs in order to check your students' understanding of instructions and that is necessary to be used in this task, for example. A good example of ICQs is, do you need to work in pairs or individually? Do you need to write down the questions, or you simply discuss these questions with your partner, something like this? And of course, it's important to provide feedback, provide timely feedback after each activity. You can ask your students to report their partner's information and tell something about their partners. And from time to time, you may incorporate peer feedback and peer checking into your lessons. For example, if the task is to write a story or write sentences using some specific grammar structures, when the students are ready, you can put them in pairs and ask your students check each other's sentences and comment on their mistakes or comment on the content of the essay or the story which they have to create. And now let's take a look at some examples of active learning activities. One of the examples is think, pair, share. I think it's pretty obvious from the name of this game. The students have to think on the question, on the answer to a question for some time. After that, you put students in pairs to discuss, and finally, your students have to report their opinion to the whole class. The next example would be projects and creative tasks. For example, you can ask your students to work in groups and create a menu for the restaurant or create the restaurant itself and then present. And in order to make this activity more interactive, you can ask them to do it using some online resources like Jamboard or Canva, or even just Google presentation or PowerPoint presentation by simply adding some pictures and using some animation. Okay. The next example is problem-solving activity, which activates students' higher order thinking skills and allows your students to cooperate together and find a solution to different problems. The next example is role-playing. It can be conducted in groups or in pairs. One of my favorite examples is peer teaching or learning by teaching. So you give a topic to students, you give them some time, and they need to prepare and then try and teach this topic to their peers, to their partners. We can conduct these activities at the revision lessons in order to activate their knowledge of the topics learned before, or we can conduct it in a way of a guided discovery or something like this. And the last activity in this list is peer review. I have already told you that is when your students write a story and then they exchange their stories with their partners and they need to write a comment about a review or a comment about their partner's writing assignment, or simply say what they like or dislike about this essay. But in order to make it more effective, provide your students with a list of the things that should be included in the essay. For example, 3 adjectives, 3 verbs, present simple, present continuous, and then give these checklists to your students and ask them to check their partner's assignments according to this checklist. And I wonder if you know any examples of active learning that we can use in the classroom. If you know, please write it in chat and share it with your colleagues. Gallery, I suppose gallery walk. Any other examples? Make decisions investigating. What a wonderful idea. Anything else? Fishbone. Okay. Okay, I think that we can continue. And so far we have discussed some of the tips that we can use to hold our students' attention. And these tips require some preparation and they usually take some time during the lesson. But there are some other things that we can use to grab our students' attention on the spot, and we call them attention grabbers. They are quite short, simple to remember, and they can be real fun for students. So let's look. Attention grabbers are some call and response routines in which the teacher calls out something and the students have to repeat, or a teacher asks students to repeat some actions or so on. These attention grabbers help educators to manage their class, control the noise level, and of course, get students' attention in a fun and not boring way. And let's take a look at some examples. The first thing that you can do in order to get your students' attention, you can try using some nonverbal signs such as maintaining eye contact, raising your eyebrows, smiling or making an angry face, I don't know, keeping still and silent, or using some basic actions and gestures. You can also try clapping or stamping and so on. Another thing that you can do is you can try using total physical response. In this case, your students will be able to participate in this action as well. So you simply ask your students to repeat some actions after you. And one of the great examples is the game Simon Says. Like Simon says, touch your nose, and the students have to touch their nose. Simon says, turn around, and the students turn around. It's a good example because it teaches students to pay attention and listen to the teacher, and it keeps them focused, of course. Another example is call and response technique. And I think that you all know this technique. That's when you say at the beginning of the phrase and your students have to continue the phrase. Let's take a look at some examples of these phrases. So I think the phrase with baby shark do, 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 do is one of the famous, but be careful because your students might start singing and dancing because the song is really viral. Okay, and one of the attention grabbers that I use with my students is 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And when my students get used to this phrase, I change it from time to time. So instead of saying eyes on me, I say 1, 2, 3, and then eyes on the board or eyes on the screen. And since my students don't expect this, they start paying more attention to me. And of course, you can come up with your own phrases. If you have a good rapport with your students, you can ask them to create their own attention grabbers, and then you will use these phrases during your lessons. But one more thing that you need to take into account, that in order to use these phrases effectively, you need to teach these phrases beforehand. For example, devote some time at the beginning of the lesson for students to learn these phrases and tell them that you will be using these phrases during other lessons, and your students have to continue these phrases. You may even print some worksheets for them and ask them to learn these phrases at home in order not to forget. And there are plenty of attention grabbers on the internet. You can find different variations of them. So it's up to you which phrase to use. Okay, let's continue. Another thing that you can do to get your students' attention is that you can simply start counting slowly from 10, and you can ask your students to join you and count together. It works perfectly with fast finishers. You can ask them to help you and count from 10. Instead of counting, you can use timers. First of all, it's a useful tool because it allows your students to check how much time is left for them to complete the task, and it also allows you to get their attention because some of the timers have some sounds when the time runs out. So when the timer gives a signal, it means that your students need to stop working on the task and start paying attention to you. And of course, you can also find some songs and sound effects on YouTube and use them as attention grabbers. And you can switch the lights off and off. I'm not sure that it will work with online courses, but you can try doing it with your offline groups. And now let's take a look at some useful resources. So the first website, I think that you know about it. If not, here it is. Now you know. So here you can find different timers, not only timers actually. This website provides a range of different tools for teachers, like name pickers, group generators, and so on. And I use it because there you can find some cool timers. But if you're teaching in Ukraine, please do not use these cracking fun timers because they might be stressful for students and they can activate some negative memories. So try to use some neutral timers, or you can also find some topic timers. For example, when it was Easter, I used some Easter timers with my students, and there were eggs which were running, and my students were so excited because each egg had a name of my student. So it was a fun thing. Okay. Another website that you can use is called Dojo. It is, I would call it an online journal. It is a good tool to organize your learning process and keep track of your students, for example, because you can create classes, and you can also give points to your students if they work well. So it can be used as a motivation system for your students. I'm sorry. And it also offers a range of different cool tools, such as timer, again, random name picker, group generator. You can use it as a noise meter if you have a noisy group. You can use it for think, pair, and share activities. And there you can find some background music, which you can turn on during Sapling and storing activities. And the last website is called Class Tools Timer. Again, if you simply write Class Tools, it will transfer you to a website with different tools for teachers, but I use it just as a timer because you can add some YouTube videos or tunes and make it more interactive. And now, guys, if you know any other things that we can use as attention grabbers, please write them in chat. Yes. Famous quotes, humor, agree. Helping hands, yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So I have almost finished my webinar, but before I say goodbye to you, I would like to tell you about our TalkEn.Cloud platform. Maybe you will find it useful and you will decide to purchase it. So let's see what it is. TalkEn.Cloud is an online platform for teaching English. So basically, it's a learning management system that helps you to organize your teaching process, and it helps you to schedule your lessons, keep track of your students' process, and of course, it provides you with a range of different tasks, activities, and it offers you a complete leveled language program. So let's look at the details. Yeah, so that is how it will look for teachers if you decide to purchase this platform, you will get access to different interactive books with plans for such levels as pre-A1, from pre-A1 to B2. You will also get access to different materials for revision, or some materials about hot topics such as Halloween, Easter, Thanksgiving Day, or other events connected to the British and American culture. There you will also find tests for students, and in this platform you can organize your teaching pace, you can plan your lessons, you can schedule your lessons, you can provide feedback for students, and when your student completes the course, they will get a certificate, and they will be able to generate their certificate in their accounts. And one more thing, which is really cool, when you buy this platform, you automatically get access to different webinars and training sessions conducted by the teachers from Green Country and TalkEn.Cloud. And let's look what it offers for students. It offers different interactive workbooks according to their level and age. Again, they can see your feedback. All the topics are up to date, they are modern, they're interesting, and students also get access to extra activities to revise some topics or enrich their vocabulary. And if you are interested, I would like to invite you to the presentation of TalkEn.Cloud platform, which is to take place tomorrow. And if you want to attend this presentation, please scan this QR code and register. So I will give you 1 minute to scan this QR code and save the link. Okay, I hope that you have scanned the link, and now we can move on. So we have been talking about feedback many times today, so I would like to get some feedback from you. That is why scan this QR code, join the quiz, and leave your comment about today's webinar. I can also send you the link to chat. Okay, 30 seconds more. And then I'll open the page with the question. Okay. If you can't scan the QR code, you can find the link in chat, or you can leave your comment in chat as well. Okay. Okay, thank you for your feedback. Okay. Few more seconds to leave feedback. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I'm happy that it was useful for you. All right, let's continue. And now, if you have any questions, you can ask them in chat and I will try to answer them. Yeah, so there was a question about the certificate. In order to get the certificate, you need to complete the test. You can find the test under this video when the webinar will be finished, or you will get the link to the test to your email. You need to get maximum 75% in order to get the certificate. Oh, is there free content for UA? Yeah, so if you attend tomorrow's presentation of the platform, you can get demo access to our platform and you can try using it with your learners. How can I get the certificate? Yeah, the link to the certificate the link to the test will be attached under this video. After you complete the test, you will get the certificate. One more time, in order to get the certificate, you need to complete the test and get maximum 75%. You will find the link under this video or it will be sent to your email. Okay, so I guess that is it. Thank you for being attentive listeners today. I hope that you have learned something useful today, and I wish you luck and never give up. You can do everything. Try to incorporate different learning techniques into your lessons and try to make them interesting. Goodbye.